I recently had a case where the mom and the dad came in to see me. DCF was investigating them for allegation of neglect, stemming from an incident where the mom and dad went out to have dinner. And they lived across the street from the grandparents. The grandparents were watching the kids. Not a big deal. Happens all the time. Mom had a meeting at this restaurant, and she asked the dad to be the designated driver. And dad was on the other side of this restaurant and bar with a few of his friends watching the ball game. So mom had a glass of wine. He was the designated driver. They had a plan. And mom had a meeting with a bunch of the local people. She went over to the other side of the bar, and dad had a beer in front of him. And she was furious at him because he was supposed to be the designated driver, which means you don't drink anything. So they went out in the parking lot, and she let him have it. She was really upset with him. She was going to have a glass of wine, and she didn't drink anything after that. She had one glass of wine. She says, I came out just to relax with the girls and talk about what we're going to be doing and how to do it. And, I asked you to be the designated driver. And as designated driver, you don't drink anything. You stay sober. So no one can say you were drinking. Because if we get stopped on the way home or something happens, you want to be able to tell the police, I haven't been drinking. They can't smell any alcohol. Well, father didn't do that. And he admitted he was wrong. So they go home, and when they get home, somebody called, well-intentioned, I'm sure, the police, because they were having a disagreement out in the parking lot. And when the police got there, the police went into the home and saw the home where there was a bowl on the floor and a clicker on the floor, and maybe they thought that the parents were fighting, which they weren't. They had already discussed what they had to say outside, and they came home, and the children were asleep, but the police insisted that they wanted to see and speak to the children. So the parents got the children up. Now, one of the police officers worked at the local school and knew their son and recognized him and told the parents point blank, your kid's a great kid at school. He's a real leader, and he plays a lot of sports. The police didn't arrest anybody. Usually when it comes to a domestic situation, the police will arrest somebody. Why? Because if you leave one person in the home, one person can't argue with one person. And the reason they always seem to lug a person out of the home is so there is no further disturbance or possible domestic violence situation. So nobody gets hurt. But on this particular night, again, nobody was arrested. But DCF did file a report and get a report from the police that night because of the bowl on the floor, and there was clicker and a few other items on the floor, which the police thought they may have been. So they made an error on the side of caution. And so next thing I know, I got the parents in my office telling me the story. And so we contacted DCF, set up a time to speak to both parents and the children. And we worked with the department in the spirit of cooperation, getting the evidence, all the documentation, and showed them that these parents had had a disagreement. It wasn't a fight. There was no domestic violence. And the children were the stars of the show, because the children told DCF point blank that the parents do not hit each other, do not get into fights. They may have a disagreement, but they don't fight. And that DCF asked about the clicker that was on the floor. Well, this family had a very, very, very large dog. You could put a saddle on this dog, it was so big. And the dog knocked the bowl and the clicker off the side table, according to the children. And the children didn't pick it up and put it back on the table, which they probably should have, but they didn't. And the police thought that this was been knocked over during a scuffle or something with the parents, read into it, and gave that information to DCF. And the children very simply put a kibosh on that. Told DCF, when they told the truth, that that's not what happened. The dog knocked it over, and it's not uncommon for the dog to be a little bit clumsy in the house because of the dog's size, just a very, very large dog. And DCF social worker looked at the parents, looked at the whole situation, did their due diligence, contacted the collaterals, and when all was said and all was done, they unsupported the allegations for neglect regarding the parents and a possible domestic violence situation. Now, the moral of the story in this case is the following. Make sure you get all your witnesses to speak, including your children. That's why it's so important to make sure your children get to say what they need to say without being afraid, without being bullied by DCF or being spoken to by themselves. Have your children tell the truth, tell the story. And you as the parents, you can't all of a sudden clam up and say, I'm not going to talk to you, because then you don't tell your story. Got to get your story out. Got to tell the truth. and support it as best you can with witnesses as well as evidentiary documentation. It's huge. All the kids are doing well in school. All the kids were well behaved, well groomed. No concerns at the school. No concerns with the pediatrician. And there's no concerns about the house. The grandparents, again, live right across the street. And they stood up and spoke about how this is a really nice couple and that the kids are terrific. And all evidence pointed to this. So there was nothing that had to be made up or mistruths or half-truths or no truths. The truth was told. And when all was said and all was done, it was broken down, and made it easy for DCF social worker to reach the right decision. DCF wants to reach the right decision. Help them. Help them with your plan. Plan your work your plan. When you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Make sure you get your story told. Make sure your story gets told the right way, with the right evidence, by telling the truth, so that everybody can go home happy.